Great, thank you. All right, welcome to our panel. We're going to be talking about video platforms, over-the-top video, traditional video, and let's get started by hearing from our panelists about their backgrounds. And Jeff, you want to kick it off?
Sure, thanks. Appreciate it. Excited to be here. Jeff Weber, I'm CEO of Zone TV. 25 years at Southwestern Bell, SBC, AT&T, and last 10 or so on the UVerse side. Been doing Zone TV for about a year, and we're sort of against the grain guys. So our role in life is to go find the best digital first content, curate that into what we call dynamic channels, so more than just linear, and actually take it back into the pay TV world. So we're really bridging the OTT and pay TV and taking all that's good from linear and all that's good from the OTT world and trying to put that together in a way that consumers really like. So it's been an interesting year and a lot of fun so far.
Great. Miles.
Hi, I'm Miles Dinsmore. I'm a partner and COO of ModOp. We're a creative services and technology company. We have half the company is devoted to sort of branding and messaging and campaign work. The other half is really based around technology development, UX, UI, and then some digital strategy like social listening and SEO. Our philosophy is we brand channels and we channel brands. The idea there being that we see all brands as channels now, and the ability to kind of engage directly with the consumer across multiple touch points. So we channel that branding in terms of defining what the messaging and strategy and what the brand wants to stand for, and then we brand the channels by actually implementing it across the multiple touch points.
Great. Xavier.
Hi, everybody. I'm Xavier Kochar, founder CEO of the Video Genome Project. The Video Genome Project is a video curation project. It's company's part of a large company called SDI. And what the VGP does is it goes out into the collective, what we call the collective, taps into any open digital ecosystems, publicly available open unstructured metadata, finds it, cleans it up, organizes it, and then runs data science against the now structured metadata and turns it into what we call genes. And we use the genes for purposes of recommendation engines, discovery, personalization, et cetera, and we run analytics against these genes as well. That's it. A lot of experience in OTT. Know most everyone up here in the OTT, digital first, all that kind of stuff. I'm a believer in sort of open data. So.
Great. And Judy.
All right, I'm Judy Johnson. I'm with a company called Bottle Rocket. We create video experiences for companies such as USA, Sci-Fi, Telemundo, Oprah Network, Hallmark, and a variety of others. So we create experiences on iOS, Android, Roku, and Apple TV right now, and expanding more. So we pull together, I would say we're part innovators and part integrators. We create amazing UIs, but we also have to integrate with a lot of different technologies and a lot of different platforms to be able to pull together these experiences.
Great. And I'm Jonathan Hurd, a director with Altman Valandry and Company. We're a 120-person strategy consulting firm focused completely on technology, media, telecom. And one thing I've been working on lately is simulating skinny bundles and other combinations of live TV channels. We've actually developed a capability to simulate any combination of 150 different live channels at any price point from a variety of providers, either over the top or traditional. And we've been written up in Moffett-Nathanson recently and have gotten a lot of good press out of that. So anyway, just wanted to give you an idea of what I've been working on recently. All right, come on in, sit down. Let's start with the consumer experience of video everywhere. To one extent or another, you're all very involved with defining and crafting the user experience. What are the biggest challenges right now that you see from a consumer's perspective with video consumption? Anyone dive in.
finding the content. I'd say navigating, the multiple platforms, the window rights, all of that. I think is probably the biggest challenge, both on the consumer side, but also clearly on the provider side, in terms of making sure that people know exactly where to find it.
I totally agree. It's not only where to find it, let's say you've got a Roku device. You have all these apps, and they each have content in it. And you don't want to go to 70 different apps to find out what's in there or what's available. It's just hard, and there's all sorts of probably great content that you're missing because you just have no clue where it is. I'll even say there's a lot of shows. People would love to think that there's shows that everybody knows what networks are on, but many times people don't. You know a show, and is it in the USA app?
Right.
Is it in the Sci-Fi app? Is it in somebody else? It's just being able to find what it is you're looking for, something you might enjoy, which is probably why you are doing what you're doing. So.
I know. That's why I'm just quiet. I'm being quiet because
Keep that up for you.
Yeah, but it's funny. When we started the company 4 years ago, a lot of the distributors, the video content distributors, they would talk a big game about UX and UI. It was the stuff we were doing was it felt like a nice to have. So it just warms the cockles of my heart that like people finally start seeing that, yeah, it's a bitch to find content, and really once you start kind of peeling back the layers of an onion as to why it's so difficult to find content, that's where things get really interesting. So, I mean, it goes without saying that I completely agree. I mean, I created a company because of this problem. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm obviously not going to argue with the whole panel, so I'm going to agree as well. But I'd sort of add a specific example is when it hit me. So I mentioned we take digital content into the pay TV space. And we were doing a demo for an operator, several people around the room, and I'm in the middle of a presentation, and I like to think I was wowing them. But what occurred to me is that what people were sitting around the room doing is watching the content. It was dude perfect content, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff. The audience I was presenting to was probably not the target for the dude perfect content, but they were loving it. And at first I was sort of annoyed that you're not listening to my silver tongue pitch here, and you really need to be hanging on my every word. And it struck me, the product Zone TV is working exactly the way we want it to, meaning this very issue, the people in that room weren't going to go find that content, but if you have a smart platform and a good experience and you serve it up, there's great content that those people want. And it was such an epiphany. The product worked like we wanted it to, but it was just such a good example of this problem. And there's a million ways to try and solve it. That's one. And you'll hear some others, but it's clearly the overriding issue.
I love
in this
hearing that
space.
story because sometimes it's such a sometimes like a thankless job. Like I kind of feel for special effects guys in movies, right? When's the only time you actually notice special effects in a movie?
When you shouldn't.
When they're bad, right? But
It's an offensive line.
Yeah,
problem.
and like
Exactly.
just
When
more
they didn't do their job.
Yeah, when more recently, and I don't know if you guys saw the Pixar short that's being, or those two guys from Pixar that that had this short and they went on these film festivals. We have completely stopped. It doesn't even stop us anymore that this is animation. We're just so caught up in the story and the content, and we're not quite there yet with Discovery, but we're going to get there very soon.
Right.
Yeah, just to highlight the nature of the problem from a consumer perspective, we asked in this annual consumer video survey we do, if you were going to use TV everywhere, in this case on your devices, which of these options would be better for you? A separate app for each channel you subscribe to, or a single app from your cable TV provider? More than 80% of people said a single app from my cable TV provider. The whole notion of going out and finding all these different apps for all the different things you want is just a really, makes consumers' lives difficult. And I think it goes beyond discovery. It's also conflicting user experiences
That's right.
on each of these apps, right?
We were in the speaker ready room. I was talking to the Dea, who's the CMO at Variety, a very entertainment heavy person. And what she was saying is, you know, they're this same issue, right? And, you know, forget about inputs. The whole family has to get up and move to a different living room where the XYZ box is, right? And it's like, and we've actually experienced that in our home. Like, nope, we're going to watch it in there. And it's just so painful. We make
The
it
different
really hard.
devices
Yeah.
and the different,
Like
rights
anything,
issues.
solving one problem creates another opportunity. As soon as
Yep.
this problem's solved, then you think, I'm the content owner and I want to get my content found. And now I have an app feature screen. I have a page that I can promote what I want to promote.
That's right.
If it's somewhere else, I lose my ability to promote. I lose my ability to target what I'm trying to get you to learn about too. So it solves a problem. It creates a different problem where we'll create different solutions for it.
Yeah, so solves a consumer problem, but creates that problem for the content creator who wants to have that found. Miles, we were kind of talking about this earlier around if you are a content creator, how do you actually how do you promote that content and make consumers aware that it exists?
Right. Well, that's a really interesting problem as well, right? I think what you were just talking about, Judy, that I think on the content kind of provider side, right, you want to create a unique enough experience to differentiate, your app or your service versus everybody else, and create a device for promotion and cross promotion, and essentially keep a sticky user flow. The challenge is if you push too far in the innovation side, then it frustrates consumers who are used to a very specific discovery system, and then layered on top of that, of course, is that to I think the other point you made is that people don't even necessarily associate different shows with different brands, and creating a device to do that in this new ecosystem is especially challenging, particularly when you've got like the device platforms really owning, when it comes down to it, the templates for video delivery on those different templates. So it's impossible from a content provider perspective to kind of create a consistent experience on Roku and Apple and Xbox and whatnot.
And it sounds like that experience you want to have, if you're the owner of that experience and you have that customer-facing view, you want to be able to differentiate based on that user experience, right? So then if you're a content provider, you're in some ways forced to conform if you want to fit in with the paradigm set.
And you can't
that distributor
frustrate, consumers too. We've tried a few things with, slight variations in UX and creating new features, playlisting and enabling people to create playlisting. And again, like the mantra really is simplicity first, right? Like people really want to get to the content fast, and so if you try to push too much of that differentiated product, you're just going to end up frustrating the user base.
And with respect to this user experience, what examples have you seen from a customer-facing perspective that really do a nice job of making it easier, making discovery easier for consumers? What are some of the best examples you've seen out there that really help ease that pain point of discovery?
For me, it's interesting. Like, I don't think, again, like that I've seen necessarily a brand do it well, because most of the ownership of that navigation really sits on the device level. Of course.
So at the device level, like who's doing it? Who's doing a good job?
I mean, what's interesting, like the new Apple box, sort of the Apple sort of set-top box allows for a little bit more innovation than, say, the old one. And so I think that you're starting to see that change. But but right now it's all based on devices.
I don't think anybody's doing it well, right? I mean,
Yeah,
for your
nobody's
question,
doing it great.
it's hard to say. And there's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of rumors out there of people that are going to do things, but I think right now that there is a problem because nobody is doing this great. And there's not a ton of different devices. I mean, there's a pretty finite set.
Yep.
Well, just to give an example, I'm pretty impressed with the voice control in my X1 set-top box. The fact that I can say almost anything into it I can turn closed captioning on when I'm watching Game of Thrones so I can understand what they're saying. But also even finding shows, it's very helpful. So, for me, that's actually probably the best experience right now. It doesn't give me access to all the content, but given that that is a differentiated experience, let's say, do you see other players, either over the top or traditional, that are getting it right?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to make a decision, essentially. Do I serve up what I think you want to watch, or do I let you go find it? And so the X1
Right.
voice is a really nice enhancement to it's your problem as the consumer to go find what you want, which sometimes is precisely what you want to do. I know I want to go watch X, and just let me get there
Right.
easily. That's all I'm asking for. So I don't think there's a right answer here. I'll tell you what our approach is. We believe pay TV is going to be around for a long time, so we sort of start with a linear-like approach, which means kind of serving up what we think you're going to watch, but we give you the OTT functionality, meaning jump ahead, skip, browse, all the stuff you can do online
Right.
if I'm in complete control. So you can sort of dial up and down that continuum. But, you really have to, we're trying to sit in the middle and give you both, but it really is one
Yeah.
of those two. And sometimes I'm in the mood, I don't know, just bring me something, and if you're good, then I'm happy. And sometimes I know what I want to watch, but that's the decision you got to start with.
That balance between discovery and sort of that immediate path to letting the consumer choose. Do you find that it tends to be almost based on genre in terms of which path the consumers prefer?
There is some of that, sort of the live nature, right? But I think it's as much demographic or the demo psycho mix, if you will,
Sure.
as opposed to genre, right? But even that, there are times when an individual knows what they want, and there are times when the old, where do you want to go eat? I don't know.
I was actually going to use that as an example. So I agree
If
with.
I'm on the same page as him, I'm feeling.
No. Okay, watch. I disagree with Jeff. So
I feel even better.
no. So Jeff said it's or kind of like sometimes you want it to given to you, and other times you want to you want to search for it, etc. Right? Okay. We view that as kind of binary. I'm telling you, it's not going to be binary anymore. It's going to be like when you want, like, so when you're hungry, right? There's the just bring me whatever, give me 4 dishes or like a course, and then there's the let's see, what do we feel like? Oh, and you kind of narrow it down. But that's not actually how it works, right? When you want to choose, when you're deciding to eat something, you go, okay, well, who am I here with?
Right.
If I'm here with these guys, I'm probably not gonna, because everyone's wearing like coats and all that, so I'm probably not gonna take them to like Wings and like go to like a sports bar, right? So it depends on who you're with. Depends on what mood you're in. That's what I said. Depends on the time of day. It
Right.
depends on what's going on, like in the world. All of these things which you don't actually think about, which your brains are processing, now computers are able to process that at the same time. So I actually now marry this with what Jonathan loves most about Xfinity or X1, voice control, from a technological standpoint, like but imagine that like with your Alexa. Okay, or with AI, right? So it learns. So you walk in, you go, "Oh, Alexa, I'm home, and it's just me tonight." Okay, and Alexa goes, "Oh, it's 10 p.m. You must be exhausted." Okay, there were the debates. There's a good chance you missed the debates. So you don't even have to tell Alexa that you're looking for something. Alexa gives you a small multiple choice almost, and you still have control. No, I don't want to. The debates again, I don't even care anymore. And then it also marries that with, I know at 10 o'clock you always watch Seinfeld on syndication, so let me throw that out. That's neither of those. That's not Google search, and it's also not, all right, what's on NBC? And we have the tech now to do that. It's just about, it's all these other issues that are holding it back, like, non-technical issues, let's say.
So we've kind of got search, we've got discovery, and we've got recommendations, essentially, is what the Alexa model boils down to, right?
Yeah, and then if you marry AI, so machine learning, then you don't actually have to, it will get smarter and learn about you over and over and over again. And there are so many other categories that don't have as many rights issues, where you are already seeing this. One category that I sometimes joke around, but sadly it's not a joke, that I've gotten very familiar with is online dating, app dating. They kill it. They do a really good job with personalization, okay? And it depends on where you are, like geolocation. It depends on what you like. It depends on what you've chosen. And generally speaking, over time, it gets smarter and smarter about you. So.
But it's the rights issues that do hold it back in this case, right? In terms of like across the ecosystem being able to do that. Certainly on a major platform like Netflix, you can.
There's another also giant issue. There's rights. There's Jonathan alluded to it. There's or someone did. I'm sorry, I forget who it was, but someone said that. Or maybe when we were talking about how do the content providers get their content like kind of out there. So you got the content providers. Mm-hmm. You got the content distributors.
Right.
I'm not even counting companies like ours. We're like intermediate. We're like enabling technologies, but content providers, content distributors. But what I will call are like the large tools companies. And what you've seen, and over the last 20 years, a different one is always in the lead position depending on what the subcategory is, right? So if you're a content provider, you leverage your content to get in other businesses, like a Disney, like in other distribution platforms. If you're a content distributor, like an Apple TV or somebody else, you leverage your distribution. Or no, a better example is Netflix. You leverage your distribution to get in content. If you're a tools company like Google, everyone came to us for the tool, and now we're going to get into everyone else's business. So it's rights, and it's also what I'll say is like almost like business politics.
Right.
But you know what's crazy is that people care more about short-term profit. And so I see this with Hollywood all the time. There should not have been a Netflix, just like there should not have been a Blockbuster. Just like there should really not have been a lot of these other kind of startup distributors. But I got to tell you, like, it is so hard if you're a content provider, if you're a studio or a network, when someone comes and just gives you ridiculous minimum guarantees, you kind of just take that deal. And look, I mean, Seth's out there, like, you know, like the studio's like, sure, Netflix 8 years ago,
right.
Take this 5-year deal, and what you're going to guarantee my entire deficit, for the deal, and now what? Now that all the studios are trying to unwind their deals and not renew. So that's the other reason. But it sucks, though, because we have the tech to do this. It sucks for all of us. It's just reasons like this.
You want specific on that? That's pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
The standard Netflix deal to many theatricals is, so you do a movie, you're generally maybe going to recruit 80%, investors are going to lose their money, a few of them, but mainly everybody's going to be made whole. A standard Netflix deal, to Xavier's point, is 150% of your costs upfront, worldwide rights were done.
Right.
So who's not going to take that 50%? You got a $40 to $50 billion market cap company, and so people sell out, take the, it's the history of the media.
Well,
Make money, right?
and the reason they can get away with that, why can content companies get away with that? Like Disney couldn't get away with that. Why can Netflix get away with that? It has to do with their multiples.
Valuation.
That's right. It has to do because now you're a tech company and you're valued at $50 billion or whatever.
Yep.
Sure, whatever. Like so we'll do this, and it's so hard. Like it's like the sirens, right? Like
Well, you still perpetually see too the traditional content providers sort of sacrificing their own forays into this area for the sake of sort of short-term ad rates, right? So they're still, even though yes, some of them are clawing back, the library deals from Netflix, they'll still give you the season one, hoping that drives more more awareness of something, and of any given show that then they can monetize on season 2.
Yeah.
Right. But then they're all still trying to play in this space, dabble in the space with their own TV everywhere apps, which nobody knows or cares about, because a lot of the library content's not really there. Right?
Well, and it's
so
also
they're
it's-
sacrificing like the long game for the short game.
But what's crazy, if you're an observer, if you're a student of the industry like I am, there's nothing new about this. Like, this happens like every couple years or every 5 years, and then everyone's shocked. Everyone, what? Like, how about this? Disney owned Go. And all of them had an opportunity to buy Google. They all had an opportunity to buy Facebook, right? And they're like, we'll make more money if we leave it independent. So I mean, it is a absolutely fascinating thing that the studios keep on getting into this same mistake. But here's the problem. The only way to combat this is the studios need to have a joint strategy. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with working with studios. I'll tell you something very boring in the metadata business. Metadata, information about film and TV. It took 20 years to come up with a unique one identifier. So everyone, like a movie, like in a computer, it doesn't have the name of the movie. It has
It's a product ID.
It's an ID. Studios could not come up with one ID, like a SKU, could not come up with a SKU. And then finally, that was the big breakthrough. But that's not the only piece of metadata, right? There's like actor, time, like all that.
Right.
We're not even on that. So the reason why this is difficult is because if you're arm in arm, go ahead, new entrant, go ahead, Snapchat, right? Snapchat could start going into this space now a little bit. Go ahead, we're not gonna let you do it. And then Lionsgate's like, well, how about we just release all of our stuff? And then Warner's finds out that, and well, screw that. And then there it is.
Right.
Sorry.
No. Every now and then, so let's talk about traditional service providers, traditional pay TV operators. What are the challenges and opportunities that are created here? And, are they doing enough to take advantage of the opportunities and fending off the challenges? Jeff, what are your thoughts?
So listen, I said it earlier. I think the pay TV operators are going to be around for a very long time. I don't think they go away. I personally love a headline that's OTT's taken over the world, pay TV's dead, because we're going the other way, and I think that gets everybody focused over there. I don't think they're going anywhere. That said, there is fantastic digital-first content that's being created. There's a cost structure and economics that are sort of order of magnitude lower, so you can do that high-quality content. There are other distribution, and all of the things that we know are happening out there. So if you're an operator, you have to try and figure out how to play in that digital-first space. You're in the business of delivering content in a pretty simple way, frankly. Do this. And so if you're not in the business of bringing digital-first content to your consumers, to me, it's the equivalent of saying, you know what, color, video, that's that's a separate category, and we're not really going to play there. Today we think about, call it traditional pay TV, and it has a different business model and it's a different ecosystem. And over here's digital-first content, different structure, et cetera. The notion that a consumer views those as separate as we tend to is just silly, right? And so there is a point in time where what a consumer wants is to get the content they want in an easy way on the biggest piece of glass they happen to be around. That's sort of the long and the short of it. And so, our business is try and help those operators and bring that digital-first content to them in a pretty easy way. But there's a lot of ways as an operator you can start to broaden your reach. All the skinny bundles, all the things they're doing make sense within the context of pay TV is going to be here for a while, and the subscription model makes a lot of sense for a lot of people.
One of the things that the pay TV operators or the industry in general attempted to do is create TV everywhere, the ability to watch TV programs and movies on devices other than your television set. Based on our survey, the awareness of TV everywhere among pay TV subscribers is about 36%, and it's been stuck at that for the last 3 years. Is this a missed opportunity? Are there reasons that pay TV operators have not promoted it as aggressively as they could have or targeted the right audience? What are your thoughts on? It seems like an obvious part of the experience that they're missing here.
Well, it's what I was my theory is that going back to what I was saying earlier, that there's not the willingness to necessarily sacrifice the short-term ad rates and push users into a platform where they're not just able to monetize as quickly, and then combined with that the library content's really not there, is sort of.
Well, and remember how TV Everywhere really came about, right? So if you think back to the world a few years ago, if you're a large cable or satellite provider without wireless, you're pretty exposed. You're extremely exposed to, simply put, a bundle, but the delivery of video to other screens. You own one, but you have no access to others. So TV Everywhere is a very overt and I think very clever way to sort of neutralize that threat to the cable and satellite. So that's been done. So now TV Everywhere, if you're a large cable provider with no wireless, that's okay. You don't have to have wireless from that perspective because your customers have access to it on the wireless providers that are out there. So, mission accomplished. They did a terrific job of implementing that and neutralizing that threat. So beyond that, what they really want is people buying subscriptions. So
Right.
that's not how they make money. And so I think you sort of go back to the roots. I think they did exactly what they wanted to do.
So the fact that millennials are cord cutting and cord nevering, and granted, the numbers aren't that bad, but millennials are subscribing at a lower rate than older audiences. They're also using online video and other devices to consume video more. Wouldn't it be a great way to maintain or even grow your subscriptions among millennials if TV Everywhere?
If what they wanted was the opportunity to watch on a smaller screen, yes, but that's not what they want. What they want is to not pay $80 a month.
Right.
And so TV Everywhere does nothing for you in that context. It's certainly the right message to be able to say watch anywhere. I mean, all that is good, so don't get me wrong. But if I'm not, why am I not subscribing to your video package? Is it because what I really want to do is watch on this screen? Like that's my goal? No.
No,
It's
right.
because $80 feels like a lot, and I only want, all the reasons we know. So I think TV Everywhere doesn't help that piece. Now, all of the set-top box, the DirecTV Nows and the Slings and skinny packages start to try and get at that. Not sure it gets at directly the sort of complete control that they want. And again, the economics on that are gonna sort. There's not gonna be free content absent stealing it. And it isn't gonna play. So I think you'll start to see subscriptions and you start putting those together, and I've got $95 of
pricing
$7
model, yeah.
packages, and it doesn't feel quite as good.
Right.
I think it's important too, because I get this stat all the time that millennials are consuming a ton of content on alternate devices. But then we dig into it and we start going, well, what content are they actually consuming? Are they consuming in what length of content? Are they consuming really short form content? Are they consuming long form content? And what are they looking at? And it's still like the Dude Perfect. That was a great example. It's available. It's ad revenue free. It's not that long. It's enjoyable, and a lot of that gets consumed. But I think when you're looking for more premium content, we call it cord never, there's a service of some kind involved, right? They're watching they're paying somebody some money for this content to watch better content. And that won't go away. Content costs money to make.
Right. No, exactly. Now, and that's why I think what Jeff was saying earlier about, you don't see pay TV going away.
Right.
In order to have great content, you need to charge consumers for it at some level. The ad revenue isn't enough. So speaking of service providers, we were talking earlier about platforms and the fact that, Comcast bought the platform years ago, continues to make acquisitions. Verizon bought OnQ and Uplink and continues to make acquisitions there. How critical is it for these service providers to own these platforms or as part of their experience? Or is it sufficient for them to use platforms developed by others? And what kind of a strategic advantage does it give you if you own these platforms?
I don't think it's a huge strategic advantage. I think they did it for rational reasons, different reasons in each of those cases.
Amortize a cost kind of.
You know, in some cases, you're just buying, it's a make or buy, and you're buying a capability and you want to control roadmap. I mean, all rational reasons, but that is just that's just an infrastructure decision. And typically operators are going to own that,
Right.
or most of that, from a quality and all the things they try and drive. I don't think you see that turning into a competitive advantage in most cases, because the tech, to the discussion, you can emulate tech in most cases, right? Certainly the delivery elements that we're kind of talking about here. So I don't see it having turned it, but it is a way to kind of jumpstart if I don't have the skill sets or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, just in my experience, it's actually quite simple. I mean, it's quite boring, I should say. So it's
Please share.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, time to hear this.
yeah, I do all the boring stuff. It's like this. It's build buy, build buy
options.
lease,
Right.
and just from I won't use any specific names, but you can just infer that it's everybody. So I take just the amount. Let's see how to put it this way. So in the smaller companies, and smaller doesn't necessarily mean like 10 people. I mean, smaller could be one of these companies that gets acquired. How quick these guys innovate and grow and actually get stuff done versus just if you are, a big company. It's funny, the voice activation thing. But the reason I was chuckling about that, and I kind of did like a big deal. They've been working on that. If I told you how long they've been working on that, and I don't want to say anything negative about anybody that could crush me, so I won't. But at these small companies, they just do things faster, and because they do things faster, and people there's just a different culture. Like sometimes I walk in these companies.
Just less layers of.
Well, yeah, I walk in these companies. Like I brought some of my. There's a meeting. I brought some of my tech guys into this company, and it's a giant company, thousands of people, and we were in like the technology wing of it. So a lot of engineers. And he's a young guy, and we were walking through. The meeting ended like at 5:15, and he's walking through, and he goes, "Was there a fire drill?" And I go, "What?" Because it was empty. Like the whole place was empty, and I just think about it. Like we were chuckling. He's like we kind of like settle in for like the next 4 or 5 hours at 5 o'clock. And so when you stop and you think about that, that's like a cultural thing that happens at big companies. But even if that's sort of a softer issue. The larger issue is try to get anything done. Like if you're a UX guy, like try to get like one little feature.
Right.
We worked with a company that I think they accidentally told us that to change on their homepage, like their web homepage, to change their logo from like this from here to here on the homepage, it took 7 figures and 1 year. Okay, so at our company, we make whole scale infrastructure like decisions and changes. Like we have an idea in the morning, we like argue about it like in the late morning. We say, okay, run a test, and we realize it's a bad idea after the test is done by the evening. So I think part of it is that it's a long way of saying that these guys are the big companies. They move so slowly that these smaller companies, then it becomes like a buy decision, right?
They have the product, right?
Right, and then they go, then they turn to their CTO and they go, how long is it going to take to do this? And the CTO goes, like if my company, it would take it would take probably 1/10 the time. But the CTO goes, I'm going to say like 4 years. And they go, all right, 4 years, this and that. And they go to corp dev, and they corp dev, we're a big company, beat them up on price, cut it down to like one quarter of the price. And that's how this stuff happens. So I actually, to your question was, is it valuable? I think it is from a financial standpoint, it may be valuable. But the reason why I think most of them, your effect is like big deal. We haven't seen anything. Because the integration like once you like acquire the asset, then you try to integrate it, then that's a whole nother shitstorm, you know. And then you know, usually if you have not smart founders, but like they have their little earn out and then they leave and they take their staff and they form another thing, and now you're just left with like this platform that no one really knows how to run, and then they scrap it and write it off anyway. That is sort of that I would say is the default position. And then the last point I'll make on this is that it's the shutting off. So when I get people come to me, the first question I ask is, are you going to kill this? Because competitively, that is one of the biggest things. And you know, there's like I will tell you that is my number one concern. I will absolutely take less money. I mean, I'm not stupid. I won't take, like, if someone throws a whole bunch of money, but it's like, are you taking this just so Netflix can't have it? Are you taking this so no one else can have it? You know, right? Because that kind of sucks. It's like having a baby, raising it, and someone wants to take your baby only to like keep them in a cell.
The strategic advantage is to keep it off the market.
That was a rough analogy. That was a really rough analogy.
I had to pull myself. I was going to say only
I
to
know
kill
what
it. So.
Wow. All right. So let's, if we're kind of saying, I think the consensus is, it may be valuable to have this in-house from a financial perspective, but it may not help you from a strategic differentiation.
It's a capabilities and
perspective.
advancement. It's not a
Right.
differentiator.
So what are and what will be going forward the true differentiators?
Well,
you know, other than the content
It
rights.
will be a
so to say.
differentiator. I
Yeah,
just think
okay.
I just don't think it'll be a differentiator for long, right? Because what'll happen is somebody gets it, and maybe they'll have like a year's head start before everyone goes, damn it, and then they go to the CTO and they fire him because they said you said we couldn't, and they get someone else that will have their, like, you know, the second
Similar
mover.
product, right?
Yeah, and sometimes the second mover is better, you know.
Yep.
So
All right, so
there
let's.
is
So it's any competitive market, constant innovation. You know, you have this feature now, someone else leapfrogs you, whatever. Where do you see being the areas in which the service providers will differentiate? You know, I know we talked about search and discovery and recommendations, but maybe some other examples. And maybe Judy, you're seeing some of these in the apps you're developing. You know, what makes a better app right now, and what are the ways that providers are going to leapfrog each other?
So one of the things that we see, especially with the service providers, is they're starting to recognize that users are wanting to be able to access content in different ways that they may not even have. And so you kind of brought that before, like, do they need to have these other solutions and everything? But we see a recognition of that. I mean, you've heard conversations about, hey, should a service provider be offering Netflix as part of their solution?
Right.
Or should they be bundling with these things to make it possible that you still have a one-stop shop to get the content? And I think that's kind of one of the things, is it still boils down to, as a consumer, can I get what I want from you? And it's not bells and whistles, and I'm like you, we've tried all sorts of different features and things like that. It's really, can I get what I want, when I want it, where I want it, that makes the difference. It's not there's not some like different magic thing out there other than the consumers being able to access what it is that they want when they want it.
So, all right, but I'll throw a couple of examples out there. You know, historically, HD, video quality, big differentiator, right? There was a race to get that, and it does make the experience a lot better, resolution. You know, how important is video quality? High dynamic range, you know, 4K. How important are those differentiators?
Well, I'm going to go, because I was at Sony at the time when, you know, we were putting out television sets at the time, and, you know, we talked some about the HD differentiator. Some of that was we wanted smaller televisions in our house. We didn't want those big boxes. We liked those little slim ones that took up less space. That drove a lot of HD, and then the higher quality content. And I do think content experience is really important. The ability for users to have a good experience. If you have buffering, stuttering, that's not a good experience. I know there's the purists and the people that are going to go, you know, the 4K is the next thing. I want the best experience. I can tell you, I can put streaming services in front of people. As long as it's a good experience, they're not buffering, stuttering, they're not going to be able to tell you what range of HD they're in, right? For them, I don't know. There will be the purists that's important. Sports may be a big part of that.
Yeah, and I think
there's some
HD is a
good
good
enough
example.
quality.
Nobody was able to sort of create an advantage with HD. Now, I think there were a few laggards, and it hurt some of the service providers because they just didn't move or couldn't move or whatever the case was. But nobody sort of owned that. You see a little bit with DirecTV and sports. They've managed to carve out a position. At this point, it's been built on the back of Sunday Ticket, which has, been an advantage for them. But it's really hard from a quality, because everybody, again, it's just tech, right? Everybody can do it, and some lead, some follow, but you're not going to let somebody get away from you. So 4K, I think, is the same thing. When we were looking at 3D, right? And we were aggressive on HD, but couldn't, get my head around 3D, so we weren't going to lead there. We just had I was the product guy at the time. We weren't going to lead there. Turned out to be the right call, but on HD, we were as aggressive as we could be. But if 3D had taken off, we would have been there.
Moral of the story is Jeff is always right on his calls.
Well, all right.
No, I just don't share the ones where I'm wrong. Not Open State.
Well, all right. So here's an example. I'm hunting for these examples of differentiators, even if they are differentiators for only half a year, whatever it is, because that's what it's all about, right? Just continuing.
Okay, I'll throw some out. So, rights. I mean, like football, right? That is a DirecTV in the satellite war, and then later in the cable satellite war, DirecTV just. There's nothing else you could have done, right? What's interesting in our local, I assume everyone is here in LA, like when Time Warner tried to do the same thing with the Dodgers, there was massive backlash.
Yep.
But I do think content, that's one differentiator. Some of the technological stuff, the delivery stuff, I think I agree with Judy that there's after a certain. It's kind of like there's a threshold that once you break the threshold, it's really incremental, and half the time buffering. You guys think about it too. When you guys are watching a video at your house, like on Netflix, okay, like on your screen, or Netflix or on your phone or on your tablet, whatever, and it buffers. Do you even know whose fault it is? There's no way to tell.
Right.
I tell you, and I can tell you that everybody, and I can tell you from dealing with a lot of customer service departments on the phone, it's never their fault, right? It's always, oh, well, that's the Wi-Fi. And then you call the cable company or whoever with Wi-Fi, oh, you have a bad router. You have a router, it's like you have a bad modem. There's always something else, right? So, yes, that sucks, and unfortunately, the people that get the most blame for it are the service provider, whatever the platform is that you're watching. But I do think that on technology, I think the UX, I think that, but as a differentiator. But you know what the irony is about of having a differentiator by definition different, right? Is that you can't have too many
differences.
You can't have too many differences.
Or people get frustrated.
Yeah, you can't have it's all going to end up converging into one
I think you're
generally
already seeing that,
UX. Yeah, and you are, right?
Yeah, you're already seeing a lot of that.
So, and then if you get too crazy on the UX, or just broadly speaking, let's say the UI.
It's like a general acceptance. Once certain preferences sort of reach a general acceptance level, then they get adopted universally.
Well, yeah, when we just something basic, which we're not even a consumer company, but we put our website up, and I had all these ideas and everything, and one of my guys we can't do that. I said, why not? And then I said, because that's not Web 2.0. And I said, what? What's Web 2.0? It's there's a generally accepted
right.
a design thing, and so I mean I actually yeah.
So
I think
occasionally we'll see some
content
feature
breadth is a place
Yeah.
you can try and differentiate, and so that doesn't mean HD or 4K
Right.
or whatever. But if you just make the decision, we're going to win on breadth, and that means I'm going to have more good content, and I'm going to make it available more places, and generally that's going to be pretty easy to do. So, and I think you can create some differentiation there, at least for a while. You can certainly get a first mover, and if you're a good marketing company, you can carve the space out. And I think that is just
Jeff,
a
on content, would you
constant.
say exclusivity of content as well? First exclusivity.
I think
Like Netflix with, like,
exclusivity is a piece of that. That nobody on the planet could afford to just sort of buy up, right? But if you use exclusivity in a smart way, and first window in a smart way, and then sort of make breadth or own categories that matter to your consumer. I mean, you can start to cobble it together in a way where you can make a legitimate claim. I am better at content. I have more content, and really start to stake that claim. And then you just have to, I mean, you've got to be maniacal about continuing to own that advantage. And that's where it gets very hard. Because if you start creating real share shift, somebody's going to overpay to try and block that. So that's why it's tough to do. But I think that is a space that, and you know, as ugly and nasty as it is, consumer experience is a space that you can try and do that in.
Yeah.
It's better customer service, but that is very hard.
Yeah, some of the examples, just to throw them out there, see what you think of them, are like I'm watching more Showtime and Starz than HBO sometimes, because on Comcast I can download episodes to my iPad and watch it without those quality problems you were talking about. So download capability, right? How many hours of storage on your DVR? I was talking to someone here yesterday, and you know, consumer utility goes up with the more hours. There's a diminishing returns, but someone was saying, oh, mine's fills up and it's a lot of my family stuff, and so I can't delete it, and I need more, you know? So it seems like there are a lot of things like this in addition to exclusive content or other breadth of content that can be differentiators as long as you understand what drives consumer interest and you develop those things and push those things as part of the user experience overall.
The problem with these, especially you call them service providers, infrastructure providers that have these locked deals, meaning like the DVR stuff. I mean, we had that technology long before, but like if you're Adelphia or someone else, why do you like? What choice do you have? You're going to pay me anyway. So, and we've already spent billions on our existing infrastructure. And just because you've got some hotshot young technologies, the technology guys that say that, hey, guess what? We can put a computer in people's home, a hard drive in people's home, and then people go, what are you talking about? Like, we just spent billions on this infrastructure, and what is that? How is that? You hear it all the time, right? Churn and what's the other one? ARPU and the one where it gets more people in. I don't know.
Like share of gross ads,
right.
Like flow share.
Like, and they say, okay, so let me get this straight. You want us to do $1 billion rollout so we can keep our existing customers? And so it's one of those things. It's that where even this stuff, the discovery stuff and all that, you know, it's you need to like get that snowball down, because it's just there's so much inertia. But as soon like the DVR thing, all of that happened within 18 months. We had the DVR technology, and then we had the DVR storage, and then within 18 months, everybody had this stuff. But what I would say is, I'm with Jeff on this. I mean, how many people are going to be like, I could either go Time Warner or DirecTV, but Time Warner has an extra 4 hours of DVR storage. I think these are just more like nice things to have, you know. So I think differentiation is content.
But to the point, for a period of time, early days on Uverse, there was a clear advantage on DVR. We had whole home DVR, and everybody had a DVR, but we hammered the hell out of it, and we probably had 24 months of real advantage, and that went away, and we were sort of shocked it lasted that long, right? But if you can string together and stay ahead, you know, that's how you do it. Right?
I personally think it's like Netflix. I think that is the differentiator. Like, so Netflix, like, you know what differentiators for Netflix? Not delivery, not breadth. It's Stranger Things. You know, there are they're like four. You need 4 shows. 4 shows, and you've got someone. 2 shows, and you pretty much have it. Think about it. Would you keep your Netflix subscription? Okay, if there's only 1 show, most people would they keep it for just 1 show? You think about it, right? Or, but yeah, if it's really really big. For 2, no decision. of course I'm going to keep it. Like I get to watch Stranger Things like for 3 months, and then I get to watch House of Cards for the next 3 months. All they really need are 4 of those, and there's your year, and then it makes it worthwhile, you know. So that's why I think it's original content, and this isn't. I mean, they all know this too. So.
Well, not just that, it's the reverse of that, which is that you don't have to get tempted to watch hundreds of shows that you really don't want to watch.
Mhm.
That's something you guys haven't talked about this whole discussion, which is that,
Yeah.
you know, one of the reasons that I'm 55, I've never had cable because I don't want to watch stuff. I don't trust myself to not watch crappy stuff. So I never got cable, and it worked.
Yeah.
And I think there's some of that, you know, people want to basically make a clean decision to watch something of high quality, not get dragged into hours and hours of semi-good programming. So they take like a defensive stance.
Well, that's the point you were making earlier too, that the problem with the service providers isn't necessarily the delivery mechanism, it's the fact that no one wants to pay $80 for content they're not watching.
That's true, but the problem
No,
is.
that's not that. It's that I don't want to watch it. It's not the money. It is the money because I'm a cheapskate. But it's actually not the money. It's I don't want to like have a life where I start watching.
But here's the problem. It makes sense if you know your 4 shows. Great. What are you gonna do when you finish watching the shows? You need a discovery mechanism. It's the reason why the number one media type in this country. Do you know what it is? Terrestrial radio.
Yeah, right.
You know, with Spotify, with Pandora, with all the on-demand stuff. Why? Because there's sampling. We need sampling, you know? So it's great if there's always somebody, either social media or a group of friends or radio, that says, hey, this will be your next House of Cards. But how are you going to get that cue?
I personally use word of mouth, and I think I'm not actually that normal as people think. I think more discovery is word of mouth than you would guess, even in the high-tech era. Because people don't trust
you're
their.
normal in that you fall into the 20% of the homes across America that aren't
That have,
paying for something, aren't paying for one of the MVPDs.
But even those people who have access to all that stuff, they still don't know what to watch. It's like,
so what are your favorite shows? Like, I mean, how do you just deal with whatever network puts on? It's got to be tough sledding for you recently if you just deal with like broadcast network,
I
right?
just watched 5 years of The Wire, you know, that's how I spent earlier this year. I wait for years and years, and now I've started watching stuff more currently.
You pay for it though. 5 years of The Wire means you have to pay.
Netflix, Hulu,
So it's
I used to
Netflix.
buy DVDs and rent DVDs, but now I do just Netflix
Oh, so what you said is misleading.
and Amazon.
So you said you're a cord, yeah,
Cable,
yeah, yeah.
I-
You're a cord never, but that doesn't mean you don't pay for
Yeah, I'm
things.
an early adopter on Amazon
Cord Never.
Prime.
You're like a 55-year-old millennial.
Right.
Any,
Are you subscribing to your parents' HBO service by any chance?
Do you live at home? Do you live at home?
Stealing passwords.
questions from the audience here? Yes.
The shows on Netflix, though, because everybody talks about House of Cards or all their original content, but only 30% of their viewership comes from those original shows.
How do you know that?
It's been published.
Question up here, yes.
I don't know if this was addressed before I came in, but I wanted to know whether you discussed frictionless buying with OTT and capabilities in the future to press pause since you are connected with internet and buying options within OTT that obviously exist within the technology and integration.
So you're saying, I'm repeating for the microphone here. You're asking about commerce that happens while you're watching, because it's interactive when you're watching OTT, that has that potential. And let me are you talking about commerce of like merchandise or commerce of
Integrated.
buying other programs or
No,
subscribing to the OTT service itself, or
No,
what?
I'm talking, the Mindy Kaling show was a good example when they did it on Fox, but it really hasn't been integrated in most programs nor on most networks because of, it takes a lot of time. It's like basically like tagging your jacket and then saying, pause, you can buy that at Brooks Brothers, purchase.
This is like the old Jennifer
That's what I
Aniston
was
sweater
just
from the the original days. So Jeff, you probably have some points of view on this.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. That's my point of view.
You kind of answered it yourself. It's the tagging of the content to be able to go through. The technology's there. It's the workflow that
Right.
still is quite tedious and quite difficult to pull together. But I think it's one of those holy grail
Versus
things,
the
right?
ROI.
And
Why,
we think
which
networks are
reg-
gonna get on board.
Why?
Well,
Why would they get on board? I'm just curious. Why do you think?
Opportunity to make revenue.
But so they have to risk their user experience, their core bread and butter, which is the experience. So there's like a floaty thing or something like that, so that they have to that the supply chain to deal with even merchandise, right? Think about that. Like now you got some of their biggest advertisers like Target and Walmart,
Right.
that are super pissed at them, you know.
And
So
they could add brand integration through the brand.
integration, yeah, integration's great, yeah, that, but like to actually buy it. I'm just curious what I don't see it's the reason we were joking around about it is because for 20 years, we've been trying to do.
Answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so they could do it because in advance, if they're producers for future shows, chose to do brand integration, it would be a buy-on feature that would be discussed in advance. If you're absolutely right, to do it post would be like potentially a mess, but to do it in the future would be something that just like Cadillac does a brand integration in a,
Build it into the content.
yeah, you build it into the content and you build it into the OTT experience. But it wouldn't be a floaty thing necessarily, it would be something where you press pause and they have apps already that can do it. I was just wondering if that was something that you guys discussed, but.
Do it at the end of the show.
We
didn't.
We did not discuss it.
Okay,
We
sorry.
did not
That's a good
discuss
point.
it.
That's a good
But
point.
you know what? It
You're
has
right.
been from the
User.
earliest days of IP delivered video, or even before. I mean,
Yeah.
red button on Sky, right? I mean, there's been this is a
remember the Coke can.
really
That was like the 20 years
yeah.
ago we were talking
This
about
is
that.
and it just never has come to pass because of the challenges from the user experience perspective and the back end integration.
I think
And
the
rights
net
also like,
is the net.
ancillary rights or secondary window rights, like keeping that to your point. Like if you build it into the content and then in the second window, is that product still relevant?
The number one reason is not technological.
That's true.
It's
Yeah.
ad sales.
You know.
So you have a show. You have Mindy Kaling. You have the Mindy show, right? So Fox sells the ad sales department sells that. Ad sales is completely different. So Cadillac or what a Brooks, I don't know. Let's use Cadillac, okay? So now it's integrated within the show, and there's a pause thing. Now you got the ad sales department that has this
Direct to the audience,
has this has done. They are now limited because now Cadillac has spent a lot of money to do that.
Right.
But right after that, Ford has an ad, and now you got ad sales, and kind of and content at each other's throats. That's in my experience. I don't know in yours, but that's been the biggest hurdle to make this happen.
You could build it
Anybody
into the-
ever asked
into the-
anybody ever asked a writer and producer to make sure they work a certain sweater in? I mean, it's like you really have to be all the way upstream to do it well. And then you're in the creatives saying, you know what, we want to make sure we sell a lot of VW this week.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Amazon
oh,
native
Yeah.
concept.
it's tough.
And you have to
It's
lock
very,
out like Idle, like what Idle did with its integrations, like Ford, what was the first three? Ford, Coke, and the phone.
AT&T, yeah.
right? Jeff. They
Apparently it worked
the-
great.
Yeah, no, they did that, but you know what? They forced Ford, Coke, and AT&T. Seth, you know this too, to buy out the entire category, and those were together. Those were like 9-figure deals. So Ford, Coke, and AT&T can do it, but I don't
But
know.
then
how
do they
many-
have the ROI to do it? Is the
Well,
ROI there to actually do that regularly?
They stopped.
Question in the back here.
A question for Xavier, just a discovery question. Wondering, you work with a lot of unstructured data. How do you go about extracting data from unstructured data types like images and video? And how do you do it? What do you do with it? How do you manage that?
And feel free to cover this offline potentially,
let's cover
because
this offline.
it sounds like that maybe the two of you could have a deep
Although it
conversation.
just makes me tingly to think about it. So.
No,
You
no,
own the
if
whole
it's
business.
okay, I'm just thinking, I saw another question, I want to get to a couple
Yeah.
more. Seth?
I guess this is Xavier, but it could be anybody. I have a legacy client that I'm doing carriage deals with both the satellite guys for. And so I'm in this time machine where I'm dealing with Gracenote, TMS IDs and stuff like that. So basically, I did the TiVo launch at DirecTV 15 years ago. It hasn't changed like an inch. And I'm sure any of you guys could create a much more robust, interesting metadata system. Is it about the IP around the actual metadata itself? Is it just institutional malaise, or like, why, I mean, why isn't there a better system yet? Why are we still dealing with this? And I know it's a little inside baseball, but I can't help but ask because I'm living with it.
So, I know it's boring tech stuff. I'll do it very,
It's not
try to do it
boring.
very quickly.
It's-
So the reason is because metadata, no one gave a shit about metadata at all. Until like really in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
And the reason was because the only reason why metadata even existed, there's like 3 reasons. One is delivery. So like the guy at the television uplink station was like, oh yeah, this is, what slot does this go in? This goes in T4635 and puts the beta tape in that. Just delivery. Rights management, and just payments, okay? So if you take a look at the basic metadata that has been around for forever, 50, 60, 70 years, it's that kind of stuff. It's technical stuff. And then later they added HD, SD, and all that kind of, right? But that's the least interesting metadata for us users. It's because when the idea behind video metadata started, this was the end product, the end goal of it. No one could have dreamed that one day users were going to have so much power in their hands that they would be able to search for content or personalize content. So no one ever had to tag content that way. So now you have this legacy metadata structure and organizational schema, and then later on, and at best, 80 years ago, someone came up with something called, like for video, came up with something called genre. And that was the best thing we had to like describe what is inside the content. And we have held on to that. So much so that when we were describing earlier, like when I gave the Alexa example, I'm exhausted. What time of day is it? Who's in the room? When did I ever say genre? Okay, but that is how
That is how we organize.
80 years worth of generations have been programmed to think about content. So now what you have is like everyone's trying to catch up because the tools are there, the search tools are there, the discovery tools are there, but now the content is not tagged that way. And the people that tag the content, and this is really interesting. So obviously we can kind of see that metadata is important, right? Do you know who tags, who creates metadata for content providers? We wish. Interns.
Yep.
The people, the studios, this has been such a bottom of the barrel job that they give data entry
data
people.
entry, yeah.
Yeah. But so think about that. You have an intern who's watching a show going, what is this? Romantic comedy? Whatever. Who's getting paid $10 an hour. And didn't have a big effect when we didn't have to do search and discovery. But now think about what the billion-dollar implications are downstream.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why.
Is there another
There's very
question?
little oversight of
I
that
think
too.
it's an interesting point. When you take genre out, you kind of went on a list there that was interesting. Mood, time of day, tired or not tired. Can you kind of just elaborate on what you do to the metadata columns to make them more interesting and help with search?
So how you decide to do it, we'll take this offline, but how you decide to do it, think about how you decide what to watch outside of any situation, okay? Like if you're gonna go watch a movie today, how are you gonna decide that? Yeah, all of those
Behavioral
items.
modeling.
It's not just behavior modeling. It's almost like a neural modeling. So it's not just behavior.
It sounds like a similar.
Yes.
I think it's very interesting.
Cool. Question up here.
Simple question for Jeff, actually. You said pay TV isn't going to go away. Obviously, who pay TV players are, like AT&T coming in, buying DirecTV. Who do you think most gatekeepers are going to be in 5 years? What's the landscape going to look like, do you think?
5 years, I don't think it looks very different. I do think there will be a mix of some of the newer players. So as set-top box becomes less and less important, delivering a robust experience, it really does be quality of network, I think. And so 5 years is probably not wildly different. One or two of the players that are really large and are sort of rumored and starting to be out there. I mean, somebody's going to win there. But so I think there'll be an additional industry consolidation. So call it, I'm not making 3 or 4 really big national players, and then 1 or 2 others. Over time, you can't have more than 4 national players in a market, and so I think that settles out, but I think it'll be pretty messy between here and there.
Just to follow up, do you think that means that most of the cable companies will end up merging? Like in the UK,
Yes.
there's only really one cable.
Yes,
Mhm.
I think they have to.
Are any other questions?
Antitrust still preventing that.
Not cable companies.
Yes.
Do you think that the OTT platforms facilitate more for independent creators or people that are new and emerging because they want to adhere to them, cutting the politics out, making it cheaper, easier for them, and that'll maybe enhance industries as a whole that are creating anything?
No, I just think it's economics. I think sort of newer platforms willing to do different models. It's not a cents per se, sort of all of those things make a little more risk-taking amenable. I don't think it's an altruistic versus not altruistic approach. I just think there are new models emerging that make more sense, right? In a world where technology allows a much more open ecosystem, and so people are, there's going to be less cents per sub and less dragging along content that's not as good, and you can do that in an OTT world with those kinds of platforms where
Right.
you can't, and or in all candor shouldn't, when you have a paid TV ecosystem that creates value in just a order of magnitude different way.
You said independence going to OTT?
Like an indie artist would be like an independent musician, people that are, filmmakers. They were discouraged because they didn't have the tool sets, the politics, the money to do it before. Technology is making it streamlined.
Absolutely
easier.
right.
So people that are really talented can actually produce this stuff and monetize on it, and that's where the new technology is really going. And I thought because of that, the industries would have less of the higher 1% or the 4 major companies taking over everything and spread a little bit more thin.
You're right, but so is Jeff. Because what will happen, because look what happened. That exact thing happened over the last 5 years, right? All these independent, call them like YouTube artists or,
Right.
with the webcams. And they, like, subscribe to my channel. And they'd get like, a couple 100,000 subscribers here, 1 million here, etc. What happened? Then some other people came up, like the networks, the MCNs, multi-channel networks, and said, hey, you know what? Let us handle all the boring stuff, like ad sales and technology and all the back-end stuff. And in return, you are just part of our confederacy. And then, but what happened next? Those guys got bought by who? Or are getting bought by Disney, by Churnin, or
Right.
by AT&T,
Discovery.
by, so
Discovery,
it'll
right.
end up,
They've got the pockets to make it short,
Talent
large.
is talent, and great talent will create content that people want to watch. So what we're talking about is a hit creation engine in the pay TV ecosystem that works a certain way, and a hit creation engine in the OTT world that works just sort of a fundamentally different way. But Xavier's point, talent rises, right? So you start this way, you start it like that starts to rise, and as you create stars and create hits, and then the large content companies are not in the business of creating pay TV hits. They're in the business of creating great content / hits, and whether that, so I think that's the
Protecting
point.
their hegemony.
Well,
they'll
hell
swallow
yeah.
it anyway.
Right.
Once
Yeah.
it succeeds, once they have the eyeballs, they'll pay premiums to acquire it, But if you're an independent artist, it's an exciting time because, areas that are like gold, like the gold rush, VR, AR. I mean,
Yep.
there aren't a lot of people there right now. Like, go be the next PewDiePie for VR, AR, for Snapchat, for that, try to build, because all eyeballs, try to build user bases. And then eventually,
That
Disney
becomes
or
valuable.
AT&T are going to buy you.
When you said cause, like the idea that she had for the product placement and like merchandising, and you say pause, I go to VR, because there's the technology where you can literally pause what you're watching, you're immersed in it, try it on in a virtual mirror,
Sure.
purchase it right there, rather than if it's non-VR. By the way, I was
Yeah.
going to say, my company is integrating that technology as we speak, and it's a double click.
That's very cool tech. I always go to, and I'm not a creative in any way, shape, or form, but what I'd always heard was, if you're a storyteller, do you really want somebody pausing and going and trying on a sweater in the middle of your show? That's where it become, I mean, it's sort of hard to get those types on board with that. So not to say not cool tech, and we have ad pods in the middle and, you know, all this, right? So that's the reality of the commercial side.
Right.
But that is a big issue, trying to get people to let's stop my story and go sell something.
Well, speaking of stopping a story, the audience, you're amazing. You're giving up your cocktails to be engaged here because we've
What?
already hit cocktail
What?
hour. It's amazing. No, you can still get them, I'm sure. But please join me also, in addition to thanking you, please join me in thanking our panelists.